Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Laura and Trocon both sent me a note about Z Library. Ebook site domains have been seized by the U.S. Department of Justice. This story is from bleepingcomputer.com, but I saw it many places. Although I was looking for a Department of Justice press release, and I couldn't find one. So I'm not sure if it hasn't come out yet or what's going on there. But the Z Library ebook site is kind of like Napster, but for books. So people upload books there, and if you're looking for ebooks, you could at the time go to Z Library and find it there. Now, the domains have been seized by the U.S. Department of Justice, so that'll put a cramp on your book borrowing there. But it's apparently upsetting a lot of people. All you got to do is look up Z Library right now in the Google and look at the responses, especially on Reddit. So a lot of people on Reddit who appear to be a little unhappy at times. Bill Toulis wrote this for bleepingcomputer.com. Internet domains for the popular Z Library online ebook repository were seized the other day by the U.S. Department of Justice, preventing easy access to the service. So the library does not appear to have been shut down. It's not like they can go in and haul out the books, but Z Library is ranked in the top 10,000 most visited websites on the internet, offering over 11 million books and 84 million articles for free via its website. The other day, the websites hosted at z-lib.org, b-ok.org, and 3lib.net began displaying a message stating the service was seized by the U.S. Department of Justice and the Postal Inspection Service. However, the U.S. Postal Inspector's Office told Bleeping Computer that they were credited by mistake in the seizure notice. They had nothing to do with this. It's just the DOJ. Now, earlier, the seizure notice on 3lib.net was updated to indicate the domains were seized by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York. So, pretty certain U.S. Attorney's Office is affiliated with the DOJ, but the FBI, of course, is their own little three-letter agency. This domain has been seized by the Federal Bureau of Investigation in accordance with a warrant issued pursuant to 18 U.S.C. Section 981B and 21 U.S.C. Section 853F by the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York as part of a law enforcement action, reads the seizure notice. Now, information about the domain name and all that initially showed that the U.S. government seized the domains and switched their DNS servers over to one that includes the name seizedservers.com. I wish I'd thought of that. I could have gotten that. And seizedservers.com preceded by NS2, and the first one was NS1. And those are DNS servers commonly used by the U.S. and law enforcement when they seize domain names. However, since then, the DNS servers for these domains have been switched to Angela, an anonymizing hosting provider. It's unclear how Z Library could transfer the domains to the new hosting provider. So I don't know some of what's going on here. I'm not that into it. Even though some of these sites are still unavailable, the Z Library is still accessible via its Tor Onion address. However, there is now a notice informing visitors of server problems that may render the service temporarily unavailable. Now, I'll admit, I've never been to this site. I've never used it, don't know what it looks like, don't know how to use it. So I'm relying on the description by Bill Toulis at bleepingcomputer.com as to what he saw when he was investigating the story. Now, the court order for the seizure is unavailable at this time. The site's domains were likely seized because many of the files were uploaded without the license of the original authors or copyright holders. And so that would seem to be why they'd done that. Furthermore, when Bleeping Computer contacted the U.S. DOJ with questions about the law enforcement action and the seizure of the domains, they declined to comment. And I'll let you know right now, that's unusual. I often do stories about the Department of Justice doing things, like I did one last week about them cracking down on that big catalytic converter ring, a group of people who were doing that. And the DOJ announced and held a press conference and issued press releases. I mean, they when they talk, they talk big. I mean, they'll often, issue all this information, everything you need to know, the names of the officers involved, everybody. So they haven't done that here yet, which just, leads me to suspect that they haven't quite finished everything they're going to do with respect to housekeeping. making sure they got all the loose ends and all those other cliches taken care of. However, complaints to copyright protection offices in the past have resulted in legal actions forcing the platform's registrar to seize the Z library domains in 2015 and further domain blockages and DMCA notices in the US and France last year. The USTR, which is the United States Trade Representative, has recently launched an investigation on the platform, causing social media platforms where users promoted Z library to be more cautious with what is allowed. As reported by Torrent Freak last week, TikTok decided to block hashtags related to Z library, reportedly responding to copyright holders' complaints. And I did not know that TikTok was ever responsive to anybody. So the fact that they decided to do something kind of surprises me. But I'll admit I'm not a big TikToker. So reducing user discoverability of content that violates our community guidelines is of paramount importance, stated TikTok. Accordingly, TikTok proactively blocks search results for terms that violate our community guidelines, including terms that relate to counterfeit goods. We also recently blocked search results for Z Library while our team assesses content associated with that hashtag. At the time of this writing, the Z Library channel on TikTok remains accessible and still shows 1.5 billion views on the channel. Now, Z Library started back in 2009 as a free file-sharing platform for academic texts and scholarly journal articles, initially acting as a mirror for Library Genesis or LibGen. Soon, though, users started uploading content outside of LibGen, so Z Library gradually became a separate entity while remaining a nonprofit, donation-backed platform. The platform's infrastructure of globally dispersed servers hosting a database of over 220 terabytes was supported by paid memberships while users received unlimited downloads and file conversion perks in return. At this time, little is known about the platform's operators and commercial status, so Z Library will likely return to the ClearNet using a different set of domains or possibly even the same ones. And I can tell you right now that one of the things that would wind up being a bit of a vulnerability to the operators of the site is it says here that they actually have a way where people can send them money. Money is often what gets traced. Now, I understand people say, Steve, they're using all kinds of, Bitcoin and stuff. That can't be traced. Well, whether the money itself can be traced, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about whether or not the people who are receiving it can be. And that's a different question, which, of course, if they're doing completely everything with Bitcoin, it might help them. But that's what I'm always curious about. Because don't forget, like the guy on the Silk Road, they got him. So we'll see what happens. And there have been other sites like this. I mentioned Napster earlier. I remember when Napster first came into existence. And I had some friends who were very, very tech savvy who were music lovers. And they're like, oh my God, Steve, I just downloaded 10,000 songs. I got these songs for free. And, there is this feeling that a lot of people have where, well, everything should be free. Everything should just be free. And I write books. I've written 15 books. And I've gotten paid to write those books. And when the books sell, I get paid some more. I get a little bit of money from the royalties for that book sale. And so when somebody suggests that, well, Steve, you should just give your books away. Well, it costs money to print the books, if nothing else. And it took me a lot of time to write the books. And if I thought I'm never going to get paid for doing this, I wouldn't do it. Don't get me wrong. I know people say, well, Steve, if you're an artist, you do it for the art's sake. Yeah, it's hard to eat your art when you get hungry, though. And so, people who create stuff do deserve to get paid for what they've done. Now, don't get me wrong. I know a lot of people are going to say, Steve, you have to understand something. We're talking primarily about academic books. Oh? Yeah, okay. Let me explain something to you. To become a lawyer, as I did, I went to 2 different schools, one of which I just coincidentally am wearing a shirt for, Southwestern University School of Law in Los Angeles. I went to law school. You want to talk about expensive books? I got a bunch of them right behind me. In fact, I've got the civil procedure book from law school right there, and I've got Farnsworth on Contracts right there. Those books were expensive. They cost a lot. And I remember buying books at undergrad, extremely expensive. And I know all the games they play. Oh, you're taking economics? yeah, you can't use the textbook from last year. You got to buy a brand new one because this is the 8th edition. The 7th edition won't do it. And if you compare the two books, there's like 3 pages that are different. Okay? I know all the games they play. I understand that. But I'll also let you know, for those of you who want to wonder how mercenary I am, I taught consumer protection at the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law for 10 years. Consumer protection. They had a textbook. Where is it? It's over here. Hang on a second. Right there. That's the consumer protection textbook right there. Professor who taught the class before me said, Steve, that's the book I use. I got a copy of the book from the publisher. They go, here you go. Here's your professor's copy, and we're happy to put these books in your bookstore so your students can buy them. I flipped through it, and I thought, I don't like this. It's got a bunch of stuff in there I don't want to cover. And also, the stuff it does cover, I don't agree with the way they covered it. And so a lot of times what you do in law school is you read cases, case law. And U of D is in Detroit, which is in Michigan. And I've been practicing law at that point in time for quite some time, not quite 31 years yet, but 15 or 20, to do the math on that. And so I thought, well, if I'm in Michigan teaching Michigan consumer protection law, I should focus on Michigan. So because of my practice, I had in my mind all of the cases that I thought were important, and I knew what categories I wanted to cover. And so on the first day of class, I told my class 2 things that shocked them. I said, number 1, the final exam in this class is going to be multiple choice, modeled on the bar exams multi-state, not essay, multiple choice. People go, really? I never had that happen in law school. I said, well, welcome to my class. Number 2, no textbook. I'm going to bring handouts to class every single day. So the class at that time met once a week or twice a week, whatever it was. I think I did both. And I said, what's going to happen is I'm going to walk into class with a stack of handouts. At the end of class, I'm going to put them on the corner table, get one as you walk out. If you miss class, contact me, and I'll have my secretary get you the handouts. But most students in law school were pretty good with attendance. And so on the first day of class, because there was no textbook, I just did a lecture, Introduction to Consumer Protection Law. And then as they walked out of class, I handed them the handouts for next week. And the handouts were copies of cases and statutes, which, by the way, are not copyrighted, they're public domain. So I can make copies of those all day long. So I would say, next week we're covering the Lemon Law. So here's a copy of the Lemon Law itself, which of course you can look up on your own, but I made a copy for you because I'm a nice guy. And here are the cases we're going to read about that. You need to read this material for next week. See you then. And I'll tell you right now, I had students thank me. Go, Steve, thank you, thank you, thank you. I was getting pummeled by the cost of law books. And so books for undergrads are out of control. Books for graduate programs are insane. I know that. So it doesn't surprise me that somebody created a site like this and starts putting up the books. I mean, now you can rent books, which was not available when I was going to school. Yeah, I'm an old guy. I understand it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm merely pointing it out. But that's one of the things that happens in the marketplace when you make something so expensive that the people who actually require it can't afford it. They find a way to rent it. So I understand all these problems. But you have to understand that technically speaking, for them to take these ebooks and put them up and say anybody can have these, well, they're going to run afoul of somebody. And you have to understand that there are a lot of publishers out there, and some of them are quite big and have a lot of money. And so if they find out that a lot of their books are being put on sites like this, they're going to push the government to do something about it. So we'll see what happens. But as of right now, the site domains of Z Library have been seized by the U.S. Department of Justice, and they appear to be mostly shut down. But the question is whether they can bring it around someplace else or survive in some other way. And the question is, can the U.S. government do anything besides just take the domain names away? Can they actually go after the people behind them? And we don't know the answers to those questions, and I'm merely asking the questions. I'm not saying that's what they should do. I'm simply saying that's what they might do, or at least be looking into. So Laura and Trocon, thanks for sending it. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I once worked at a cheap pizza shop to get by. I needed the dough.